Welcome to Smash Fiction, the podcast where we pit two fictional characters against one another in a battle of strength, or wits, or not taking any of your fucking shit, and see who would win. This week, Zoe Washburne versus Kara Starbuck Thrace. It still never goes smooth, Malcolm Reynolds mutters to himself. How come it never goes smooth? As the unidentified soldiers on either side of Mal march him toward a destination obscured by the black bag over his head, the captain of Serenity reflects on how he got to this point. After being unexpectedly flung into the Farscape universe due to wormhole shenanigans, he had managed to beat that second-rate smuggler Han Solo to the wormhole generator, and thus managed to plot a course back to his own system. Unfortunately, it was right about that time that the aforementioned many times multiversal space war broke out thanks to the proliferation of wormhole technology, and with reality shifting and changing all around him, Mal soon found himself once again adrift in an unfamiliar part of space. Without the means to find his home system or reform his crew, and with no allegiance to the myriad and, in his opinion, equally corrupt factions being formed in the combat, Mal did the only thing he really knew how to do. He started taking jobs. Months have passed since then, and Mal's fortunes have been up and down. Mostly down, to tell the truth. But things had really been looking better recently after he teamed up with a group of kindred spirits, Captain Frank Elgin and the crew of the Betty. These strangers seemed oddly familiar to Mal, and he felt he could relate to them, almost as though they were written by the same person. They made for a good, profitable alliance. Until the xenomorph job. Talk about a gig gone wrong. Most of the Betty's crew is dead, and if it weren't for the intervention of a nearby military vessel, Mal and Serenity would have been goners too. Only it was a little difficult to thank them while they were busy handcuffing him, impounding his ship, and dragging him off to present to their leader. A hand on his shoulder brings Mal to an abrupt stop. "This is him, sir," the soldier beside him announces. "The only survivor as far as we can tell. We have his ship too. It's a hunk of junk, sir." After a brief pause, a very familiar voice says, "Uncuff him, Private. He's not a threat to us. In fact, he might actually be useful." When the bag is removed from his head, Mal suddenly finds himself staring into the face of none other than Zoe Washburne, dressed in full military regalia and surrounded by what can only be called Space Marines. "Captain," she says with a slight smile, "welcome to the Roughnecks." "Zoe's Roughnecks!" shouts the man beside her, who appears to have added a Hawaiian shirt to his uniform. He tilts his ill-fitting helmet up and shrugs. "Sorry, I kind of have to do it. It's the most fun of this whole military thing, the shouting. I'm gonna go away now." Mal soon learns that Zoe and her Roughnecks are part of a larger operation known as the Resistance. They're currently bound for a planet called Arrakis, sometimes known as Dune. Zoe has gotten word that crucial information is hidden somewhere in the planet's huge capital city, Arrakis, and she has orders to retrieve it. But there's been some dissension in the ranks lately. Kara Thrace, aka Starbuck, a cigar-chomping ex-pilot from a much stricter military hierarchy, openly resents Zoe being given command despite her own, in her mind, superior qualifications. Turns out that not everybody in the sci-fi multiverse is impressed when the biggest thing on your space resume is found Earth. One night at dinner, Starbuck all but shouts to everyone around her that Zoe doesn't have what it takes to pull off this mission, and that if she, Kara, were in charge, the Roughnecks would be in and out of Arrakis without breaking a sweat. Zoe responds by reminding Starbuck that the Arrakis Keep is reportedly being guarded by a mysterious group known only as Blue Team, and that any assault will require battling enemies armed with miniguns, rocket launchers, and flamethrowers, avoiding sniper fire, sticky bombs, and sentry guns, and surviving assassination attempts from spies who can turn invisible or disguise themselves as one of your own number. Getting in and out with the intel is going to be a matter of combat prowess, stealth, and tactical excellence, and if Starbuck thinks she can do that better than Zoe, she can damn well get off her ship and do it herself. In true Kara Thrace fashion, Starbuck stands up, knocks over a table, and storms out, saying she plans on doing exactly that. Fortunately for her, she's not the only one on the ship who has problems with authority. Kara has recently befriended a motley crew of malcontents who count among their number a tree, a raccoon, a green-skinned woman, a musclehead who doesn't understand metaphors, and a human outlaw whose nose is still recovering from the one and only time he tried to get into Starbuck's pants. They call themselves the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they're kind of a bunch of a-holes, but they've been chafing under Zoe's leadership just as much as Starbuck has, and she knows they'll be up for a little healthy insubordination. Leaving Zoe's ship in their own smaller vessel, the six head down to the surface of Dune at about the same time that the Roughnecks are launching their assault. Only minutes later, the scene on the ground has devolved into complete and utter chaos, and Zoe and Starbuck each find themselves alone in the midst of the battle. So, Zoe Washburne and Kara Thrace are both trying to infiltrate the keep and grab the intelligence. Around them, Guardians are fighting Space Marines are fighting Guardians, and the blue team are defending their fortress with all the viciousness of 13-year-olds playing a first-person shooter with a fast respawn. Which ex-military badass will be able to weave their way through the madness, fight and shoot their way past a variety of obstacles and opponents, and get past the other to retrieve the blue briefcase? I don't know. That's why I, Miles Schneiderman, am your long-winded, crossover-addicted judge this week.
Yeah, Miles, just because this is set in Dune doesn't mean you have to rival the length of that novel in your intro.
I'm pretty sure it does. That's in our bylaws, dude. Did you not read those?
Oh, damn it. I never read the fine print.
Representing Team Zoe Washburne are Megan Bob.
Is there any way I'm going to get out of this with honor and dignity?
And special guest host, Neil Butler.
I swear by my pretty floral bonnet, I will end you.
And representing Team Kara Thrace are Dan Mulcairn.
Me in a dress is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
I believe it. And also special guest host, Celine Mochidler.
Lighten up a little bit, it's only the end of the world.
In order to determine who goes first, I sent both teams of advocates out to fetch a briefcase for me, hopefully without opening it and revealing the golden glowing something inside. Team Starbuck succeeded via the cutting use of cheeseburger anecdotes and fake Bible verses, though there was that brief bit of trouble with cleanup before they got the briefcase back to its owner, Marcellus Wallace. Team Zoe, though, well, there's no easy way to say this, you tried to fuck him. And Marcellus Wallace don't like to be fucked by anybody except Mrs. Wallace. So, why don't you just go take her out to a cocaine-fueled 50s-themed dance contest while Team Starbuck starts off with their opening arguments? Team Starbuck, what do you hear?
When it comes to her abilities, Zoe's certainly no slouch, but she's not super impressive either. I mean, she's a good shot, although not as good as Mal, and she's a good fighter, although not as good as Jane. And actually, come to think of it, the Serenity crew as a whole tends to be on the low end of the power spectrum in their universe, as we can see when they encounter characters like Jubal and the Operative. Now, let's take a look at how those similar abilities manifest in Kara Thrace. So when it comes to shooting, Colonel Ty, who generally has nothing but bad things to say about Starbuck throughout the show, acknowledges that she is, quote, the best shot in or out of the cockpit. When it comes to fighting, well, she's possibly the best boxer in the human fleet, and she's gone toe-to-toe with killer Cylons and come out on top. But that's just scratching the surface of what Starbuck is capable of. So Kara is an incredibly gifted natural athlete. Before she joined the military, she was well on her way to becoming a professional player of Pyramid, which is a weird, fast-paced, and incredibly challenging sport that combines the hardest aspects of soccer, baseball, basketball, and rugby. When that didn't work out, well, Kara cast around for a bit, aimlessly applying to various postgraduate programs. One of those places that she casually applied to was the military's flight program, and her test scores on the entrance exam were the highest in history. Now keep in mind, this was her giving no shits whatsoever. And she still blew everybody else out of the park. That's because she's an amazing natural pilot. Starbuck and every other pilot on the Galactica regularly have to contend with the silent starfighters called raiders. Now, these things are so incredibly fast and maneuverable that a pilot has at most 2 seconds before they can find a raider, lock onto it, and deliver a killing shot before the raider kills them. Now, that requires incredible reflexes, precision, focus under pressure, and the ability to make the right decision with no hesitation. Starbuck takes out hundreds of raiders throughout the course of Battlestar Galactica. Actually, in act of contrition, Starbuck takes out 8 silent starfighters not just single-handedly, but while trying to protect a brand spanking new pilot from getting his overconfident and incompetent ass blown up. Now, not only does she does this, but she takes out one of the enemy pilots by shooting it in the eye. And that's while the two of them are flying wildly through space. But I think Starbuck has another huge advantage. Now, Zoe's never really been able to shake her highly regimented military lifestyle. She constantly refers to Mal as Sir, and she often visibly stands almost at attention whenever he's in the room. When the Serenity crew needs to make a plan, they turn to Mal, or to Walsh and Book in War Stories, or to fracking Simon and Ariel. They don't turn to Zoe. When left to her own devices, the best case scenario sees Zoe executing a very standard by-the-book commando operation. The worst case scenario sees her freezing up and looking for an authority figure to follow. See, the highest rank Zoe ever attained was that of corporal. That's one rank above private. So in other words, she was only ever promoted once, and she was never given a command position or officer rank. Starbuck, on the other hand, starts BSG as a lieutenant, and she's eventually promoted to captain. She has far more experience with military maneuvers in general, and with leading others in particular. At one point, Starbuck actually takes a group of professional athletes and hikers out on surgical strikes on entrance silent bases. And later, she leads a group including soldiers, politicians, a priest, and the president herself on a successful mission through silent territory to find an ancient temple. She's the one who leads the rescue mission to Caprica, a planet entirely occupied by the Cylons, and during this op, she leads her people through an 18-hour standoff with the better armed and better positioned Cylons, staying awake and alert the whole time. Also, in Blood on the Scales, she and Leodama even engage in some straight-up guerrilla warfare as they move through the innards of the Galactica before taking out a group of heavily armed and armored mutineers before any of them can even manage to squeeze off a single shot. She leads a group successfully on an operation into the incredibly heavily guarded Cylon base called the Colony, which, by the way, is located next to a black hole.
Now, you can certainly read this match as being one of lawful good, Zoe, versus chaotic good, Starbuck. And it's true that each of these worldviews have their strengths and weaknesses. The difference is that Zoe has never really lived the more independent, chaotic lifestyle, and has a very difficult time wrapping her head around it, much less using wilder and more instinctive tactics when the situation calls for it. On the other hand, Kara may err on the side of the chaotic, but she understands the sort of mentality that Zoe works with. She's been surrounded by the military her whole life. More traditional, structured military tactics aren't beyond her, and we see her use them numerous times when the situation calls for it. She's just usually able to come up with much smarter, more efficient tactics on her own. So how creative and innovative is Starbuck? In the episode You Can't Go Home Again, Starbuck finds herself marooned on an alien world. She eventually finds a Cylon starfighter she had shot down previously, and uses that to escape the planet and get back to the human fleet. The thing is, Cylons have this weird bioorganic setup beneath their mechanical shells. Their ships are basically artificial living creatures. Starbuck, while running out of oxygen, not only fixes this crazy alien vehicle, she then finds a way to pilot this thing into space, and does it well enough that she flies literal circles around ace pilot Leodama. And this in a ship that she just learned to fly, a ship that wasn't even intended for human pilots. Can you imagine what would have happened to Zoe if she had been in that situation? She might have thought of trying to fly an enemy alien spacecraft, but the second she saw that this thing had more guts and organs than buttons and levers, she would have given up. She just doesn't have the same sort of creativity and mental tenacity that Starbuck has. That's another thing. Starbuck never gives up. When Starbuck, by herself, encounters one of the Cylons, the blonde number 6, on Caprica, the fight should be totally one-sided. The Cylon is superhumanly strong, fast, and tough. And to some extent, it is one-sided, because no human, regardless of how well-trained or physically fit, could possibly hope to stand up to a Cylon in a straight fight. But Starbuck doesn't run, and she doesn't quit. She takes blow after bone-breaking blow from the Cylon, blows that would reduce rock to powder, before managing to use the environment to deliver a killing blow and take out her much stronger foe. After the battle is over, we see that she can barely stand, but she still managed to win. Anyone with less tenacity and less creativity would have given up and been killed. But to Starbuck, there's always a way to win. Part of Zoe's problem is going to be that she's never really had to face a group as dramatically varied as either the Guardians of the Galaxy or of the Team Fortress dudes in the base they're raiding. The Team Fortress guys have some pretty impressive weaponry, many of which we've never seen Zoe go up against, like the Soldier's rocket launcher, the Pyro's flamethrower, or the Engineer's sentry bots. Similarly, she's never seen anything like the Engineer's teleportation tech or the Spy's disguise tech. Starbuck has encountered all of these, and way more on top of that. She's gone up against Cylons, foes the likes of which Zoe has never even conceived. And the shapeshifting spy won't have a prayer against the woman who had to spend several years of her life examining her neighbors intently just to make sure they weren't a robot. Zoe has to live in a universe where the current political climate makes things uncomfortable for her and her friends. Starbuck lives in a universe where the entirety of the human race has been reduced from many billions to a few thousand, and are being actively hunted by killer robots. Oh, and she's the primary person on the front lines, making sure those remaining humans stay alive. For both of these women, their respective wars will never really end. For Zoe, that means that she's still a wide-eyed corporal, looking around for someone else in a brown coat to tell her what to do. For For Starbuck, that just means that every new day is a new chance to be a total badass.
Fracking great arguments from Team Starbuck. Don't think I didn't notice the pandering to my love of chaotic good. I appreciate
Well,
that. Yeah.
It backfired on me the last time I used it, so I was hoping it would work this time.
But I'm pretty sanguine about Team Zoe's opening arguments. Sanguine, hopeful. Plus, point of interest, it also means bloody.
Starbuck is a lot of things to a lot of people on Galactica over the course of the show. Friend, lover, mentor, rival, surrogate daughter. She's also a poorly disciplined, ill-tempered, insubordinate, pain in the garam ass. #Danlist. Like the scenario in this week's show. She's unable to follow orders that she disagrees with or that she has an emotional tie to. For example, she let her fiancé pass basic flight training when he had failed 3 of the basic maneuvers he should have mastered. She disobeys Adama's express orders by stealing the captured Cylon Raider to go back to Caprica and retrieve the Arrow of Apollo, based on President Rosalind's drug-induced visions. And then when she's removed from active flight status after crashing her Viper during a routine training exercise, she decides to join Colonel Ty in a drunken attempt to foment insurrection in the fleet. Before the Cylon invasion, all Starbuck really cared about were the only 2 things she ever excelled at: playing Pyramid and piloting a Viper. Well, granted, she also excels at drinking and pissing people off, but let's come back to that later. Because of her piss-poor grades, the only school she could get into was the Colonial Military Academy, and that was only because her mom's exploits in the First Cylon War were enough to earn a scholarship. After a serious knee injury shattered her dreams of playing Pyramid professionally, she suddenly discovered that she was a naturally gifted pilot and went to flight school, where her talents in the cockpit made up for yet more mediocre grades. Once she graduated, though, she got right to work on those other talents I mentioned earlier. She didn't last too long in her first posting to Battlestar Triton, where she earned a reputation that meant no other CO would touch her. So when an opening came up as a flight instructor, it was pretty much her last chance. That's where she met Zach Adama, fell in love with him, and allowed him to pass basic flight training when he should have failed. Naturally, Zach was killed on his first mission due to pilot error. Great job there, Kara. Which led to Starbuck meeting his war hero father, Commander William Adama, at the funeral. Adama, feeling sorry and somewhat paternal towards his dead son's fiancée, offered Starbuck the sympathy position of second in command of his ship's Viper Squadron, and so Starbuck joined the Galactica, an antiquated old Battlestar that even Bill Adama, who loved Galactica as much as Jane loves Vera, described as a broken down old ship that was about to be decommissioned and turned into a museum, until the Cylons invaded. Since then, Starbuck seems to have spent as much time in the brig or in Cylon captivity as she has in her Viper. Getting back to the scenario at hand, I'm imagining that Starbuck made the decision to go up against Zoe during a drunken card game in the pilot's mess. Or, who knows, maybe she heard a backwards masked message when listening to All Along the Watchtower on Star-Lord's Walkman. She probably hasn't thought it through fully, or, indeed, at all. So, once she lands on Arrakis, what's going to happen? Well, unless she happens to run into Anders, Hilo, or a shot down but still functional Cylon Raider, odds are the answer is, get captured. We haven't really seen what colonial ground forces can do. When the Cylons attack, they just get bombarded from orbit. The only Marines on Galactica are either security or military police. The one time we see her trying to infiltrate a hostile situation on foot ends up with Apollo bleeding out in the bar on the Cloud9 from friendly fire. Starbuck may have had some training in ground warfare, but the only real experience she's had of being under live fire is in her Viper, where she can rely on her nimble, maneuverable ship to get her out of harm's way and return fire. When she's not in her cockpit, she really hasn't been too impressive. Without the help of Hilo, Boomer and Anders, she never would have made it off either Caprica or New Caprica. In this scenario, she has no one to bail her out, and 2 serious knee injuries can't have helped her mobility either. Basically, stripped of her Viper, and taking into account her history of poor decisions, her lack of ground combat experience, and the fact that she's soloing this mission, there is no goddamn way that Starbuck is going to get to that suitcase, let alone beat Zoe to it. So say we all.
This situation calls for a badass survivor with ground warfare skills, ability to execute a plan while dealing with chaos, and then making off with something important. Zoe Washburne is who you want to put your money on. She is only alive right now because she's already been through pretty much all of this stuff. When it comes to fighting, that's regularly a part of Zoe's life, and she's a pro. Whether it's fistfights in a hostile bar where she grapples and throws sand in the face of an attacker before hauling back and headbutting him, as seen in the train job, shooting moving targets like she does in The Pilot, or maybe where she leaps out of a wagon and manages to shoot her enemy before landing in the river. She shoots someone long range and safe. She's done siege warfare in Heart of Gold and taken out moving targets from the roof, not to mention being in an actual ground war as a corporal with the Browncoats. And Zoe doesn't let her guard down just because a problem seems to be dealt with. She doesn't drop her gun in Serenity until she knows for certain that the surprise Reaver is dead. And she won't let her guard down on Arrakis either. Zoe's seen what happens to people who let their guard down and was not a fan of it. But she's had some good shots, so what? While they aren't lucky, they're indicative of her skills as a warrior. She fought in the Unification War against superior forces and held her own, managing to stay alive and keep other people alive, like she does with Tracy Smith. In a flashback, we see Zoe sneak up on an Alliance soldier in the Battle of Duquesne and slit the entire fuck out of their throat before they can shoot Private Tracy. Tracy is shocked, and Zoe says, "Stealth, you may have heard of it." Stealthery is one of her finest qualities. She will stealth through the chaos of everyone around her, just as she stealthed through the hospital on Ariel in the guise of a medic. She makes use of the things around her to get things done, and it gives her the room to rely on her experience and instincts rather than the weapons she's trained with. On Ariel, when a doctor is questioning her and Mal, she sneaks up behind him and uses a nearby defibrillator to render him unconscious. She was observant, took advantage of the distraction Mal was fumbling through, and used the tools present in the environment, just as she will in taking out Mooks on the way to grab that suitcase full of secrets. Starbuck doesn't show even 1/10 of the perfect situational awareness,
which cannot be taught,
of Zoe, despite being in like every episode of that frackin' saga. Sneaking up behind people and making use of her surroundings, whether that be tech stuff like a defibrillator or simpler solutions like grabbing the very earth itself and hurling it in an opponent's face. All of that is impressive enough. But that's not all. Zoe can also strategize and execute plans, like in War Stories, where she rescues Mal and Wash from Niska's heavily fortified space station. She gets in 2 different ways. Once by walking in the front door ready to strike a deal with money and diplomacy, and the second time with guns and backup, ready to kill. She keeps her cool under pressure, and when Niska cuts off Mal's ear in front of her, she tucks it into her top and leaves. These 2 ways of approaching the problem are on top of her ability to sneak and lie, as she does with the train job in Ariel. She's got 3 methods of addressing issues, where escaping with something in tow is the goal, and they all have worked. Starbuck has one way to address issues, and that's by making it worse. In Season 2, Episode 16, Kara's in charge of rescuing folks from a hostage situation. But her plan, when asked by a handsome space boy, is lock and load, let's figure out the rest as we go along. And they do. And then it all goes wrong. Bad call, Nugget. Of course, if there's something Kara rarely runs out of, it's bad calls. Because holding the president at gunpoint in order to get something done isn't great either. Zoe is also able to stand on top of Serenity in high winds and trash, showing off her incredible balance. In Out of Gas, she notices fire screaming down a tunnel, about to hit Kaylee, and reacts quickly enough to throw Kaylee out of the way to protect her. Those are some incredibly fast reflexes and solid instincts. Explosions are, on the low end, 1,800 meters per second. That's a tidy 4,026 miles per hour. She noticed this explosion and moved faster than it did. Plausible? No. A thing that happened in the actual show? Yes, it is. I give you canonical superhuman Zoe Washburne. Can Kara move faster than 4,026 miles per hour? Not without her Viper. So, Zoe's cool under pressure, she's got gun skills, she's used to other people with guns, Zoe can do strategy and tactics, she can do stealth, she can do hand-to-hand, she's done ground warfare. Am I forgetting anything? Oh yeah, there's the fact that her whole career on Serenity is as a smuggler and thief of stuff. Retrieving an object kept on a guarded alien world is exactly what she's done in like most of the show. Whether it's an ancient gun, drugs, more different drugs, or her own husband, moving through a chaotic ground skirmish to steal something and then a hand-to-hand fight is exactly the way Zoe Washburne likes to roll.
That was shiny, Team Zoe. I noticed the pandering of both the Archer quote and the use of stealth as a verb, and I appreciate it. It is now time for rebuttals, which means Team Starbuck gets to show you why they are the harbingers of death who will lead you to your end.
I have a lot of things that I want to talk about, because you guys...
I bet you do!
You guys were throwing a lot of bullshit around. Like, the interior of Serenity in that one episode where they were carting around cows levels of bullshit. So
Beautiful.
What are you talking about? Starbuck has never done a ground up. Did you forget about the time that a bunch of armed insurgents attempt to kidnap Lee Adama? That, by the way, lasts all of like 10 seconds because Starbuck sneaks all up on them, headshots one of them with a pistol from a distance, and she hits the guy who's standing inches away from Adama with perfect precision and no hesitation, and then takes out a second guy when he goes for his weapon. And despite the fact that the remaining mutineers still outnumber her 5-1, at this point they are understandably willing to just kind of let them go. So she's good with being on foot and sneaking around and taking people out.
Oh, you mean on the ship? Because that's not the ground down.
No, but there is the point where she sneaks up to Anders and his people on Caprica. There's the part where she engages number 6 in hand-to-hand combat on Caprica. There's the part where she leads that big squad of hers against the Cylons for 18 hours straight. She has plenty of experience. I would argue, given her better rank, that she has more experience than Zoe does.
She may have it, but then why does she perform so unevenly? If she has that much experience, she should never have all these horrible things happen to her, and yet they always do.
Such as?
At least twice she gets captured by Cylons. She gets shot down a lot.
One time when she gets captured by Cylons, she ends up in a hospital, looked over by the most charismatic and convincing Cylon ever, who's trying to
I love him so much.
Who's trying to convince her that he's a real human. She doesn't buy it, lures him into believing that she's anesthetized, and then stabs him in the neck. That's what happens when she gets captured. She stabs people in the neck.
Well, she bought it until he made one stupid mistake. He called her Starbuck.
Even though Kara is really reckless and kind of hot-headed, like, she always finds a way back out of the situation, and ultimately she makes things right. So even though she gets into more trouble, like, she knows how to deal with trouble, which I think is an advantage for her in that kind of situation.
I would argue that a hell of a lot of the time when she gets into trouble, she gets bailed out by someone else.
I seriously disagree. Like, you guys were talking about how it was Hilo and Anders that got her off of Caprica. The only reason that's true is because she happened to run into them, like, the second after she killed that number 6. If she hadn't run into them, you know she would have found, like, a derelict Viper or another Raider and taken care of it. We see her take ships all the time. Like, she stole that Blackbird, that stealth ship, from Galactica. There is no reason she wouldn't have found a ship. She just happened to find Anders and Hilo first.
Lucky for Anders and Hilo, then, I guess.
It was very lucky for them, because she's way more competent than either of them.
She's very resourceful like that.
When it comes to, like, finding ships, yeah, she does have that sort of ship tracking device.
Yeah, she's magic ship girl, yes.
I mean, you guys say that like it's a bad thing. That sounds like a really good thing.
I just don't know how it applies to this.
The point is,
an airstrike would make this op real easy.
Even if she does find a Thopter, 1, does it have pitch, yaw, and roll controls? And 2, it's pretty lightly armed. It's not going to be able to bomb its way into the whatever building the suitcase is hidden in.
Certainly not without creating a lot of rubble and then making the suitcase very hard to find, but...
The other thing that I wanted to mention is you guys were talking a lot about Starbuck's initial mistake with letting Zakadama fly when he was clearly not ready for it. So Starbuck learns from that mistake and then overcompensates because she ends up washing out a whole class of pilot nuggets when they make small mistakes. And then she learns from that mistake and actually becomes a really damn good teacher. So what that shows me is that she's capable of learning and improving, but we never really see Zoe experience any sort of nowhere near that amount of character growth. She's just as obedient and tied to Mal in the movie as she is in the pilot.
She disagrees with Mal sometimes, and then the other thing that she does is that she disobeys Mal. She does not listen to Mal whenever they are captured by Niska, and she also, whenever Mal sends them away in Out of Gas, she comes back anyway. So... I don't know, she's loyal, but I don't know that she is necessarily...
blindly obedient.
Yeah.
I feel like we've talked a lot about Starbuck's negative points, but I think her going through so many crazy, unexpected situations and the way that she did get out of all of them gives her this added experience to really quickly and on her feet come up with a solution when something comes up. So, on a ground ops, if there's lots of crazy weapons and soldiers and other things to deal with, like, she will be quick on her feet and she will make a decision, and even though it might seem rash at first, like, ultimately it works out and she is really good at coming out of the situation successful.
Well, Team Starbuck clearly knows that anger keeps them alive.
So say we all.
So say we all.
Team Zoe, time to Ganhotsa Bidyosa, which, as I've learned from Firefly, means have a shit-throwing contest with a monkey.
That's really beautiful.
Wow, that should definitely be our tagline for this show.
You were saying that she's kind of middle tier in the group, that Mal is better at some stuff and that Jane's better at some stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh, no, I just thought it was really interesting because Jane's pretty fucking terrified of her.
She is the only thing that Jane fears.
Well, I mean...
that and losing his gun.
I think he's seen some things. He's seen some things that did not happen on camera and will remember them forever. Sometimes in his bunk and sometimes in a fear way.
I mean, I don't know about that, because the one time we see her give a direct order to Jane is in the first episode, and she's backing that up by the fact that she's actively holding a shotgun. I would think that anyone who wasn't armed and armored would take orders from her at that point. It has nothing to do with her innate scariness.
Well, she'll be armed and armored in this scenario, so I feel like that fits.
In one of the later episodes, I can't remember which one, but Jane is arguing that they should throw River off the boat, and he's shouting and stuff, and Zoe just looks at him and says in a calm voice, "Leave the room." And he does. He would never do that for Mal. He would argue the toss with Mal unless Mal had a gun trained on him. But Zoe just had to say it in a quiet, calm voice, looking directly at him. "Leave the room."
I would also say that she's been doing this for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I mean, one of your points is that in this universe, things are going to be uncomfortable for Zoe and her friends. Have you watched Firefly? Things are always uncomfortable for them.
Sometimes food not having uncomfortable.
Yes.
I mean, I agree with you. My bigger point was that
Sometimes
there's a
getting
difference
shot.
between being in a universe that makes you uncomfortable and being in a universe where your species is on the brink of extinction because you're being hunted by genocidal robots. Like,
Oh, that's right. I wanted to bring up that point too. You made that distinction. So Starbuck is in that world, and it's really shitty. But she has not grown up in that world, whereas Zoe's world has always been kind of a post-apocalyptic shithole. And that's just been reality for her. Whereas Starbuck had a relatively normal life for a long time. I mean, like, parent-wise, not great.
That's definitely true. But at the same time, I think it's a testament to Starbuck's ability to rise up to the challenge and really face an unexpected and unprecedented situation head on and successfully.
Well, she's had to do that because she's had everything handed to her on a plate. She got her scholarship in the military academy through her mother. She just happened to be an ace pilot. She got her posting on Galactica by sympathy.
And then there was a lot of nepotism after that.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
so
So
much
much
the nepotism.
nepotism.
Whereas Zoe survived because she's a survivor who would probably tear someone's throat out with her teeth if she had to.
I mean, Starbuck would not have
Maybe
gotten away
has.
with a tenth of the shit she got away with if it wasn't for the fact that Adama saw her as a daughter.
I don't know that you guys really want to bring up Starbuck's mom as a good example of the easy life she's had. Because, like,
No, I said
this
parentfully
was
kind of
the
shit.
mom who would slam her fingers in the door when she got angry at her, which was all the time. Her life growing up was a struggle because she always had to try to live up to her mom's expectations, which were never there. That's why she pushes herself as hard as she does. And even when she surpasses her mom in the military structure, her mom still doesn't give her that approval. And therefore, Starbuck keeps that same resolve and that same motivation, but she's now doing it for herself. That's why she's as unbeatable as she is. That's why she always comes out on top and wins, even when the odds are impossibly against her.
Then the case that you're making is that she succeeds by having like mommy and daddy issues and then, I don't know, internalizing them. And I want to say, well, Zoe has none of that. She has, I want to survive to eat issues.
Well, this has been one hell of a battle, and the two characters are moving down the corridor. Everything is coming apart around them. Chaos is happening. Electricity is crackling. Oh, wait, that's not electricity. It's the lightning round!
Oh no!
Oh, God, no! Oh, no, it got me! Right in the bolts.
There are two doors to the intel room, and each competitor reaches one at the exact same time. Pushing their way through, they suddenly find themselves at opposite sides of a graveyard? Where did this come from? Well, neither is sure, but the place is spooky. Like some kind of demon-haunted ruin from the Middle Ages of Earth that was, or just Earth, or whatever you call it. Well, no time to puzzle out why it's here, because the briefcase is right there on that pedestal in the center, and all you have to do is 3 briefcases. Wait a minute. Hold on here. Nobody said anything about 3 briefcases. Like, what are you supposed to do? Take 1 briefcase, or all briefcases, or what? Well, you better decide soon, because your rival is working on the same question, and it won't be long before she figures it out. Can your character deduce which briefcase is the right briefcase? If you choose wrong, can you drag yourself out of the briefcase that contains a black hole, or fight off the briefcase that flies and has teeth? And most importantly, can you remember the words sent in a secret transmission from Resistance High Command? The words they said were vital to utter before taking the briefcase. And be careful, because you might suddenly find your soul being possessed by demons, or your tongue being pinched by skeletons. Trapped in time, surrounded by evil, low on gas. who can escape this inexplicably situated graveyard with the Necronomicon in hand.
So to be clear, this is an Army of Darkness thing. That's
was that not obvious?
I'm just making sure I'm picking up what you're putting down here.
I quoted directly from the movie with the word briefcase replacing the word book.
Yeah,
that's all I did.
Okay, all right.
Making sure. I thought that would be more universal. I guess.
Sure.
Am I the only one who's watched that movie 10 million times?
I've never seen it. What is it?
Army of Darkness. It's Bruce
Bob.
Campbell.
Oh,
Bob.
is it? Oh.
All right, you know what, Bob? Your team loses. No, I'm just kidding. So, yes, this is Army of Darkness. Team Starbuck went first in the regular round, so Team Zoe will go first in the lightning round.
I think first off, Zoe would point at a grave and say, "Hey, does that say Kara Thrace?" And that would like throw Starbuck into another one of her existential quandaries, so she could go off and do some paintings or something. After that, the way I always tackle these problems, Sir Mix-a-Lot likes big butts and he cannot lie.
Right.
His twin hates big butts and always lies. So I would ask them, which one of these briefcases would your brother choose?
Well, okay. This is all very important.
You're summoning the ghost
sharing.
of Sir Mix-a-Lot and his twin lying brother? Is that your play here?
I mean, we're in a graveyard. Is there a better time, Dan? I don't think there is.
The Necronomicon is there somewhere, so we can probably get some necromantic skills from that.
I think Zoe wouldn't
Can we do a psyche roll?
I think she's going to take all of them, and she's dealt with Reavers. She's like, fine, bring on the army of the dead. I don't care. And then I think it will be like, all right, I'm not going to open them. I'm just going to take them all and then deal with everything and then get them onto the ship, get them outside somewhere safe, and then open them. And then whichever one has the important stuff in it, just take that one. And then the one that has teeth, just keep it like in a cage or something. And then that way, whenever like Alliance shows up or Reavers or whatever, you just say, unleash the suitcase. No, it's not the suitcase. Unleash the briefcase. And then it just goes, I don't know, like one of those weird things from Mario that's on a chain. It's like a weird dog, but it's like a cannonball. One of those.
Are you talking about the chain chomp?
Yeah, that.
The chain
It'll be
chomp
that.
Megan Voss?
Absolutely. And then, I mean, Jane will probably be friends with it. This is exactly what's going to happen. This is now canon. This has happened. And then the black hole, they're probably just going to take that one and then open it up near some Alliance shit.
Anything?
Or build a
I
colony.
mean, these are all, they are hunter-gatherers of space. This is all good stuff. They're not going to leave any of this behind.
Okay, is that it?
Space hunter-gatherers, Miles.
Space hunter-gatherers indeed, Bob. All right.
Hunter-gatherers.
Team Starbuck.
So here's my thought. So first of all, Starbuck has a much more mystical side than Zoe does. Like, Starbuck follows omens and shit across the universe in search of Earth. So stepping suddenly into a graveyard is no big deal for this woman, whereas Zoe is probably going to spend the first couple of minutes just trying to get her shit together. Starbuck's experience with Cylons allows her to notice things disguised as other things, so she can easily pick out the right briefcase, and even if she can't, she's dealt with black holes and flying killer drones before, so she can easily take care of those threats. And then, while Zoe is trying to remember the magic words to open the case safely, Starbuck is just going to take it and start running, headshotting skeletons with 2 pistols at once. Skeletons, obviously, are much easier targets than the armed and machine gun-using Cylons that she regularly takes on, and just sort of leaves Zoe behind, because chaos.
I love that you touched on her more like mystical side, because she's definitely got some things, this kind of like sixth sense about stuff like that. And I think, taking all 3 cases and figuring it out later is great, but then, you still have to open the case and deal with the fact that there's some crazy black hole or eating hand thing in there. So that doesn't really solve the problem, and it still doesn't give you the right case. I think Kara would be more likely to actually pick one case on instinct and know that it was the right case. And like you said, like she has had so much experience seeing things for what they are, even when they appear to be something else. So I think she'd be more prone to picking the right case and taking that one back, like making one choice that's the right choice. Not just going with like, okay, well, we'll just go with whatever and hope that it turns out right afterwards.
Oh, and obviously the magic words to open the briefcase are the lyrics from All Along the Watchtower.
Oh, there must be some way out of here.
Exactly.
God, that song's so great.
I'm sorry, Dan. I must have missed that episode where...
Wait, no, it's not rebuttals. We have to let it go.
Wait, no,
I just wanted to say I must have missed that episode where there's a Cylon disguised as a briefcase.
Well,
I must have missed that episode where there's a Cylon disguised as a briefcase.
I was going to say, are they Cylon briefcases?
No, not in the show.
won't
What do you
know
think
until you
Cylons
open
carry their
one.
briefs in? They carry them in Cylon briefcases.
Oh, that's cute.
Oh my
I like
God.
that.
It has the
Okay.
little scanning red light on the front of it.
Well, there is
Alright.
that little case that Caprica 6 carries at the beginning.
See, exactly. And that's the case that's sitting here. So there you go.
Yeah, but are her briefs in it? I think they're probably on Gaius Baltar's floor.
Okay.
Oh,
This is
okay.
at this point. This is when I bow out. I'm leaving. I gotta go figure out who wins and not listen to any
Alright,
more
bye,
about
Miles.
briefcases or briefs on floors. Bye.
It's your loss, dude.
So which show do you prefer?
I adore Firefly so much, but BSG has my heart, man. Every time I watch it, it's just better and better.
We watched the finale just this evening, and I
was very good.
so full of feels. So many feels. Ah,
Yeah, it's a tough finale to kind of wrap your head around because it definitely pays off all the plot threads, but at the same time, it's like almost the definition of Deus Ex Machina because God just comes in and fixes everything. But it is real emotional. I'm not gonna lie. I remember the first time I watched it through, my mind was blown with how good that show was. Not just for a sci-fi show, but for just visual media in general.
It's so good. I love it.
Absolutely.
And by the way, I love that you mentioned earlier when we were talking about when Kara is in the hospital and there's this Dr. Silent and stuff. I'm actually friends with the actor who plays that Dr. Silent.
Oh my
Really?
God, tell him he's the most, I love him in The Magician so much. He's fucking incredible. Is his voice that beautiful in real life? Can you feel it?
Yes.
What you need to do, Celine, is work with me on some sort of Ursula from the Little Mermaid style ritual where I will steal his voice, and then I will, I guess, give him fish legs. I guess that's the way that trade will work.
Fish legs, also known as fins.
Yeah, sure.
or
Oh
fish
my-
fingers.
I mean, I feel
I
like that's
love
the
fish
least you can
legs.
do for me at this point, Celine,
Did I miss the conversation about which show was better?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, we
Sort of.
briefly had that talk, and then it began to skew off into weird things where I was trying to bribe Celine into stealing an actor's voice for me. And in exchange, I would give him fish legs.
Okay. Well,
Not to eat though, but to have.
it's the one part about judging that I don't like is that I don't get to because I have so many opinions.
Of course.
But
What? Miles, that's not true.
Yeah, when are people gonna get
You're
to
a very
hear what
shy,
Miles thinks
retiring
about
man.
things?
that'll be a Patreon goal.
That is a whole other podcast and website.
Yeah, that'll be my spin-off podcast. What Miles thinks about things.
I would subscribe. I would write you an iTunes review.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
A positive one, even.
All right. Well, guys, both sides did a fantastic job in this one. I think Team Starbuck did an excellent job of convincing me that Kara is a fantastic pilot who can do just amazing things, not just when she's behind the wheel, so to speak, of a Viper or a Raider, but just in terms of how she gets behind that wheel, like you were talking about commandeering the Raider and her resourcefulness, her tenacity, all excellent points. I think that Team Zoe did a nice job of pointing out that that's not maybe the most relevant thing to this fight because it's not exactly ship combat. There were a lot of great arguments on both sides about who has more military experience. Starbuck is higher rank, but Zoe we actually see fighting an official organized war. Starbuck has her ambushy moments, which is great for her. Zoe has her, sneak up behind a dude and slice all the fucks out of their throat, as I recall moments. I think that there's something to be said for the fact that Zoe is very experienced in ground combat, whereas while Kara does have that, she is much more of a pilot character. I also think there's a lot to be said for Bob's argument about her reflexes, which I thought was very good. But then again, you've got a lot going on in terms of Starbuck's experience with higher technology. I ultimately think that Starbuck's lack of discipline and, as was pointed out, her tendency to get emotional, whereas Zoe tends to keep a cool head, is a big factor here. And when you combine that with the fact that Bob said the words, and I believe I'm quoting here, when Bob described the act of throwing dirt in somebody's eyes as grabbing the very earth itself and throwing it in her enemy's face.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think that's kind of the tiebreaker, and I have to give this to Zoe, to Team Zoe.
Oh my god, you guys had me on the ropes! I was like, well, I'm fucked. Goodbye, everyone.
It was super close, though.
You guys brought all the everythings. Yep. That was terrifying. Terrifying.
Well, this is a character that the both of us really love a lot, so we were
I
wanting
could tell.
to defend her fully.
And we actually sat down, Neil and I had this conversation because I don't really like BSG, but I really am fascinated by Kara as a character. And I was like, you know what? I really don't like having to rip her because I think all the things that are the best about her are the things that are her weaknesses. Like, that's why she's great. So I was like, I was with you, but I was also, I don't
it's
know.
almost an Indiana Jones. It's almost an Indiana Jones situation where it's like, I feel like what makes her a great character might not be the best thing to help her win in this particular match. Yeah. And I'm in the same boat as you, Bob. I'm not the biggest Galactica fan. Heavily militaristic things.
I hate military stuff so much.
Really,
I hate Star Wars.
Really just
I want it to be Star Wars.
I fucking love military stuff, but on top of that, I would say you should watch it all the way through, and then you can make up your mind because it just gets better.
I definitely should.
Okay.
I've heard a lot about the film. I think I tapped out like midway through season 2, so I left early. But that said, Starbuck is like the greatest character in that show, and I really enjoyed watching her all the time.
I don't know. I really like Rosalind a lot, but okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Rosalind's
great.
There's a lot of great stuff.
Anyway, excellent job though by both teams. It really was because
my God, you guys were so
I thought
great.
that Zoe's opening arguments were a little bit stronger, but you guys came back hard in rebuttals. And Neil and Celine, you guys both did an excellent job. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yes.
It was great having you, and I hope you'll come back.
Thanks for having us. It was really fun, and I would love to come back whenever, as long as I know the character well and I can speak for them.
So, Celine, we have a bunch of listeners up in the Vancouver area. So if you have anything you would like for our listeners to hear about what you're up to, you are free to plug at this point.
Well, yeah, that's great. I actually have an original play that is opening the Revolver Theater Festival on May 24th, and we would love to see everybody there. It's a really great multicultural, multi-dimensional story that I think will appeal to a lot of people.
Nice.
Man, congrats.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
I used to work with a guy who had lived in Vancouver, and I swear every other sentence out of his mouth began with, "Man, when I was back in Van."
Oh yeah, Neil, do you want to plug anything? You want to just shout out to your brother?
He probably isn't even listening.
What? Maybe someday.
Maybe someday. Hi, Cahill. Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Neil and Celine, thank you guys again so much for joining us. I really had a good time recording this with you guys.
Thank you. By the way, my show's name is Neon. But yeah, I had a lot of fun.
That is a critical part
too.
of any plug, yes.
Yeah, no, I'm just, because I'm like, oh, we have the show, and I'm not saying what the name of the show is. Yeah, no, I had a lot of fun, too, and I would love to come back anytime, so thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Can I just give a shout out to this little podcast that my wife is on?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I hear it's a good one.
I mean, it has moments.
On Firefly, I'm the Kaylee that wishes she was a Zoe holding Vera, and Dan done fucked up the recording, so that was my second take.
All right. Let's not dwell on the past. Let's move on.
Baby, that was like 5 minutes ago.
Oh, man.
Okay, anyway, I'm going to start off with general Twitter thanks. Thank you to everyone who retweeted our episodes or tweeted about us, namely Jeffrey Ketchum, Troidel, Florian, the Politipop podcast, Grayson Leo, the Indulgery, Sharon Holden, soon to be Sharon Holden Schneiderman. Yay!
Yep.
James Weaver, Raphael Medina, and Cosplay Fiend. Thank you so much. Now, I could not find this on Twitter because I wrote it down in our notes so long ago. Sometimes we get a little backlogged, guys. I'm sorry. But the Norm Oliver tweeted at the Adventure Zone and Travis McElroy about the Magnus reference on our show.
That was in League episode 14.5.
Oh, okay.
When Toothless the Dragon pulled the arm off of one of the Phyrexians and started beating them with it.
Now, also, JD Scotties and Addisonny Boy tweeted about us with the hashtag tripod. So thank you so much, guys, for spreading the Smash Fic word.
Yeah, by the time this episode drops, I think that movement is over, but...
I mean, hey, Thank you.
Yeah, no, we
Oh
really
my God.
appreciate those of you guys who were doing it. Apparently, it's a good way for new podcasts to get noticed. So we really appreciate you guys, getting out there and spreading the word.
Yeah, when we see our numbers climbing up, that's you guys.
Yeah.
Like, we haven't advertised in a long time because, oh my God, money. But
Yeah.
yeah, but those numbers are still climbing. That's all
For
you guys. Thank
real.
you so much. Let's go through tumbles. Thank you to Mr. Man334, Sid Rabbit Blog, and Jeep Rhyme for reblogging our JB match, Bond vs. Bourne. On Facebook, Jeffrey Ketchum shared JB vs. JB. Thank you so much. And Viola Sanderlin mentioned us in a comment thread. It was like on a t-shirt. It was like a kind of t-shirt ad. She mentioned us in the comments. Thank you. Bring us up wherever. We'll take it.
Yeah.
You want to graffiti Smash Fiction on like park benches? Go for it. Smash Fiction does not advise graffitiing on park benches.
We
but
do,
go for it.
we do, however, advise building a giant laser and carving the Smash Fiction logo into the moon. That we do advise.
Smash Fiction
Yes.
does not advise
We
moon
absolutely
terrorism.
super
moon
advise-
That is
graffiti.
Smash Fiction approved
Moon
by
defacement.
the word of doom.
That's right.
Oh, God. We got so close to being done with this episode without that. So close.
Yeah, I know, that was a close call, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You saved us.
And then we also got another email from our dear friend, Anthony Krepp. They suggested a match, but they also wanted to mention that Megan Bob is a wonderful addition to League.
Oh,
And,
what?
And he loves the sweet, compassionate voice that you bring to the character.
Yeah.
It says you play nicely with the other personalities. You really are the beautiful HR person of that group.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
here
you're the
to-
light of sunshine into an increasingly dark world. It's wonderful.
I'm
That's
here
right.
to attract animals and then make new family members.
That's right.
We're all getting evil fucking gear, and you're just trying to make everyone happy
And you're
with
defeating
your-
enemies literally by making them too happy to fight.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Smash Fiction. Next week, Lord Humongous versus Immortan Joe.
Smash Fiction is produced by Miles Schneiderman and production assistant Sharon Holden, with logo design by Colin Mulcairn.
Special thanks to Kevin McLeod of the Clan McLeod at Incompetech.com for our theme song, Hitman.
You can find us on Twitter at SmashFic Podcast and search for the Smash Fiction Podcast on Facebook, Tumblr, and YouTube.
Subscribe on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice, and if you leave us a good review, we shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
If you have any suggestions, feedback, or other contributions, send them to us at smashfictionpodcast@gmail.com and help us continue the fight. Team Starbuck!
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
One of my favorite things in the world is that if you watch the TV version of Pulp Fiction, the way they redub that scene is to say, "Does Marcellus Wallace look like a refrigerator to you?" Then why are you trying to
Seriously?
put food in Marcellus Wallace? It's pretty much the greatest thing that humans have ever done.
You said Immortan Joe like you're a pirate. It was great.
Immortan Joe.
Yeah, that's basically.
Immortan Joe will be here. And he'll be swinging his cutlass and using his monkey.
Oh, man.
All right, it's canon. Because I'm on Team Immortan Joe, I'm totally giving him a cutlass and a monkey. Canon.
Oh, God. Wait. Could we do it? No, that's too far. I was like, wait, can we have, like, warships?
Bob's like, wait, could we? No, that's
I mean,
dumb.
that's what
But
the
could
lightning
we?
round's for, dude.
Oh, fuck me! Why do I keep giving away my fucking lightning rounds like this? Ah! Why is everything I think of a lightning round and not a real thing?
Always a lightning round.